What's up? My name is Ken Dumbo, the MC with the sauce. Don't forget to subscribe to J. Cool.
Then I'll just give a small summary in conclusion.
Thank you, Honorable Fube. I will start by acknowledging the presence of honorable members of Parliament who some at the same time are members of Central Committee, and also to not to forget the Fourth Estate, yourselves. Like we've said before, we've continued to cherish a partnership that we enjoy in informing the people about what surrounds them, or indeed the information that is coming from their members of Parliament. Allow me to start by joining other members who have poured out their hearts to Honorable Nixon Chilangwa and Honorable Chitotela and their families for what they're going through at the moment. Honorable Nixon Chilangwa and Honorable Chitotela, to us, you are our gallant soldiers. We look at you as men that have stood for the truth. And what you're going through is purely victimization, and it's a matter of time. We are praying to God Almighty to continue giving you strength as you navigate through this very difficult time. May I also take this opportunity to convey my deepest sympathies and condolences to the Mulea family on the death of Guntila Mulea. You may wish to know that this young man was more like my nephew. He has been friends with my nephews for the past 25 years. So he's somebody that I've known for a very long time. I therefore wish to convey my sympathies and condolences to the family indeed. Today, countrymen and women, as we sat with my colleagues, we realized that we've been on this campaign against corruption the past 3 years, right from 2021. And that is why when Honorable Kafuaya was starting his discourse, he started by saying, starting again. So as a matter of fact, today's discussion could be couched under starting again. We are starting again because we want to remind the Zambian people that what they are hearing from the Anti-Corruption Commission today may not be necessarily true. Because the SEC is telling us today that they're actively investigating the matters before them. They're actively investigating the matters, the reports from the FIC. They're saying there are a number of government officials who are reporting to them, and yet they're not ready to name them. Very unfortunate indeed. Now, for your sake as a media, I want to remind you that by way of summary, we've had corruption in the health sector from as far back as 2022. And I think the recent revelations to do with drugs, containers, the procurement of drugs from Egypt, the contraction of a $100 million contract in the health sector at some point, which was later cancelled, the solicitation of bribes involving a motor vehicle and millions of rands is well known. This is common cause. It's all well known to you. We know that there's been corruption in the energy sector, starting with the procurement of fuels that were procured at a premium at the expense of suppliers who were ready to supply fuel at prices that were affordable to the Zambian people. The usage of the Tazama pipeline has been a subject of corruption, as it were. There's been corruption in the mining sector. Corruption revolving around the sale of Mopani, corruption revolving around the return of KCM, and indeed the corruption revolving around how certain mining concessions have been offered. We know that within that sector, amounts amounting to $2.5 billion have been forgiven under unexplained circumstances. This is in the mining sector. We know that taxes up to $1 billion have been forgiven under unknown circumstances. Remember, our recent definition of corruption involves decisions. It involves policy, administration, and legislation. So we are now beginning to question those of our leaders that we have put in front to make decisions for and on behalf of the Zambian people. If a leader, in the name of a minister, is going to wake up and forgive money up to $2.5 billion, money stolen from this country, we must ask, what was the rationale? Why shouldn't we think he walked away with a huge kickback? Why shouldn't we think so? If ministers are giving concession to mining houses in return for promissory notes, which sometimes are not even honored, we must ask, we must inquire. So there's been a lot of corruption in the mining sector from that front. In the agricultural sector, there's been a lot of problems in the agricultural sector. My colleague, Honorable Mutotwe Kafwaya, explained how difficult it was for the Auditor General to complete their audits for 2022 because the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture was not ready to give information to the Auditor General as required by law. At some point, we heard from Honorable Kafwaya that the Auditor General had to expunge some documents from his report on the understanding that they will be included in the subsequent report. And unfortunately, he never saw that day come because he was removed soon after. What I want you to understand is that the Constitution provides what are called constitutional watchdogs. The Auditor General's office is one such watchdog. These watchdogs are there to ensure that the constitutional provisions are properly implemented, government resources are properly employed. But these constitutional watchdogs and safeguards can actually be undermined. They can be undermined by those that are in power, like we are seeing what is happening today. The Auditor General's office, being a constitutional watchdog that is there to safeguard public resources, is being undermined. The removal of Dick Sichembe goes to point that was the beginning of problems in this country, because now we began to tamper with the structural arrangement provided for in the Constitution on how the resources of the country can be taken care of. So today, even when we are debating the Auditor General's report under two committees, being the accountability committees, Parastatus and Public Accounts Committee, those are half-baked reports, because most of the information regarding the procurements that were done under FISIP 2022 were actually expunged from those reports. So the compromise of this office of the Auditor General, has created a lot of problems for this country. I'll take you back, ladies and gentlemen, countrymen and women. You remember, I think Honorable Kafwaya and the team were on this particular issue consistently. We knew that there will be problems that will be coming. So what is happening today is not coming as a surprise to us as MPs. We are actually indemnified. We are, been indemnified in that what we feared has finally come to the fore. We are dealing with corruption in the UPND government today. And remember, the sectors I'm mentioning are key sectors that expend colossal sums of money from the Zambian national budget. That is talking about the health sector, the energy sector, the mining sector, the agriculture sector. You talk about Ministry of Lands. It's not very long ago that there was an attempt to give away 6 million hectares of land. Even when that has been frustrated somehow, we hear there's 10,000 there, 20,000 there, and so on and so forth, under very unclear circumstances. I want you to understand that there's a reason why most of these reports must come on the floor of the House, because that is where the representatives of the people are. For the sake of information, for sake of accountability, but most of these transactions don't even see the floor, a light of day on the floor of the House, including the sale of public assets, even when the Constitution says so, under Article 210. So the corruption under the UPND government is indeed a source of worry. If you look at another economic sector, for instance, the tourism, We saw the cancellation of licenses. This is because those that are in power would have wanted to favor their friends, ignoring the law and the rules that are provided. Even after the courts ruled, the court judgments have been ignored. It's only this government, for the very first time since independence, that is able to ignore a court order. And we're seeing them getting emboldened by the day, ignoring court orders as it were. Yeah, even under the Ministry of Education, some of the greatest achievements under the UPND government, according to them, has been the employment of 30,000 teachers. It has now come to our attention that within the 30,000 teachers, a number of those teachers do not have grade 12 certificates. These are just cadres. And yet, there are young boys and girls out there with very good qualifications who got their grade 12 certificates and even went for training. They've been left out. And this is because corruption is endemic in the UPND as a party. Even for things that they don't need to be crooked about, they use corruption. So Zambians must be worried about their children. We are sending our children to school under free education. But who is teaching our children? Who is teaching our children? Unqualified teachers are teaching our children. People who never obtained the basic minimums are the ones that are now teaching our children. Yeah, so colleagues, I thought first of all, it was very, very important to understand that the ministries that I've highlighted have gone through a very, very difficult time because of the corruption that has, rocked our nation. Honorable Kafua spoke about the illegal audits. That time when we were raising these issues, they seemed academic. They seemed academic. But now begin to think about them. Remember, today's discussion is styled starting again. We are starting all over again. We want to start reminding the Zambian people the corruption of the UPND government from the time they got into government to date. That's why we started talking about illegal audits. We know the machinations that went on when they tried to bring in private auditors to start auditing our defense forces. Honorable Kafwaya was on hand to give a lot of detail regarding that. We know the corruption that was in the export of maize. I think Honorable Kapianga gave a lot of information concerning companies like Golden Manila. We had situations where a company registered today, before they even finished registering in other statutory bodies, they are given a contract for 29 million. No due diligence, no capacity displayed whatsoever. So this is exactly what was motivating. Zambians were asking, what motivated President Hakainde Hichilema and his government to export maize? They wondered, why didn't they just leave the maize there? So now when you read the Auditor General's report, you realize what actually motivated the export of maize. So if you read that report, you will now find the answer why the maize had to be sold. And in certain cases, cadres went and got maize which they never paid for to date. Basically just letting go. The maize, was it 184 million, Honorable Kapianga? 184 million. Up to those figures. Maize is just collected up to 184. These are people known to those that are in power, and the maize is sold. And today we have no maize in the country. We know about the gold scandal, for instance. Okay, we're in this great country where gold can turn into zinc or nickel anytime. I've been getting a lot of calls from friends abroad and wanting to invest in the gold industry, but they're saying, look, we are worried. Your gold can turn into zinc, can turn into iron at any time. So what sort of gold do you have? Because we have people who are not straight in government today. Who? What has happened? What are the details? The corruption that went on right at the airport, at the international airport, nobody has been able to explain. I'm going to this length to explain because I'm trying to say to SEC that there is no capacity or political will to deal with anything. The plane took off, full of dollars, the gold and everything else. There's only one unfortunate young man, Cassandra, who's still in prison. What happened to the rest of the people? Where are the Egyptians? And today, SEC must come and say they've got capacity, there's political will to deal with the cases. If they had, why haven't they dealt with the reports in the FIC report that amounted to 5.3 billion for 2022? What has happened? The president came up this year and said he asked them to be quick and act. So we are saying because of statutory instrument 1123, the operations of ACC moved to State House. It's now up to the president to tell them to act or not to act. That's what it means. Because the president came up and said, please act. So it means they'll only be able to act now that the president has said. So because he's the one to cause them to act or not to act, he can also instruct them to exempt certain people from being called upon. We are calling upon His Excellency the President that it's important for SEC to be independent. Let them be given the full mandate to move on the corrupt elements. The corruption going on right now is unprecedented. The figures. The Honorable Member of Parliament for Nakonde asked our Honorable Vice President a question last week. The reason why PF was called plunderers, thieves, Wakabolala, Masholi, was because the latest FIC report was showing 2 billion kwacha. Now, if we're called thieves and all those names, over 2 billion kwacha, the Honorable Member asked the Vice President, what should we call you in the UPND with 13.5 billion? Her Honor, the Vice President could not answer. I'm asking you, the journalists, what should we call our friends now in government? They called us thieves over 2 billion. Over 13 billion, what should we call them? And imagine it's not only 13 billion that what about the gold? What about the maize? What about the land? What about electricity? Right now, it's not very clear how the money coming from export of electricity is being accounted for. We are calling upon His Excellency the President, first of all, to appoint a new board at SEC and appoint management at SEC that is capable of fighting corruption. And their first assignment should be to take interest in how the proceeds from exports of electricity are being used. We have said this for one reason. As members of parliament, we are the eyes for you, our people. It's very unusual. In my private days, I used to chair a number of boards. But for the first time, I heard that the board fired the MD for ZESCO. And the MD for ZESCO said, no, you can't fire me. Let's wait for the president to comment. You must find something wrong with that statement. Yeah. How can MD for ZESCO reject or a dismissal from the board and say, Ndelo Lela president? It's methodical. It reminds me of, a common joke in the past. When a husband, it was a new couple, there were just the three of them, they didn't have a first child. So it was a couple plus a maid. One day, the madam fired the maid. And the maid said, no, let's wait for her husband to come and confirm whether she should go or not. That marriage ended in a divorce because the wife became clear that there was something wrong. The maid said, it was only then that the wife confirmed that there had been a relationship between the maid and the gentleman. So now at ZESCO, the MD is saying, I can't go. Why isn't there?
Despite the darkness.
Yes. No, first of all, the board appointed the MD. And the board had the power to fire him. So the board fired him. The minister endorsed that and he said, I can't go. So we are saying, we want SEC to move into ZESCO, find out why people are refusing to be fired. But let's start first of all with how the proceeds from the export of power are being handled. That's a starting point. There should be a problem there. I can bet your bottom dollar there will be a problem there once that is properly audited. Yes, so I think that my honorable colleagues have said the ministers who are appearing before SEC should be named now. SEC, you cannot break the tradition. Whoever is appearing before you as a suspect, should be made known to the public. We know that the number is very big because we are dealing with a cabinet that is corrupt. Whether this is going to embarrass the country or the president does not matter because it remains a fact. For your own information, acting DG, SEC, the Zambians already know. We just want an official statement from you. We want an official statement from you, and like my colleague said, if SEC is not ready to name them, let the president demonstrate his political will to fight corruption by naming those of his appointees, in addition to the ministers, all those who are appearing before SEC. That's the only way that we'll believe that the president is taking the fight against corruption seriously. The president wants to be transparent on the fight against corruption. And secondly, we demand as members of parliament that all those ministers who are appearing before SEC should be fired immediately. We are not even asking them to resign. We are asking the president that if he wants the Zambian people to take the fight against corruption seriously, we ask him to fire all the ministers who are appearing before SEC. We are asking the president to also fire all constitutional office holders who are appearing before SEC to be fired. That is what the President Hakainde Hichilema said in the past. He said that about Dr. Chilufya. So we want him to live up to his word. The president said, if it was me, all those who are appearing before SEC, I can't allow them to fly flags. Your Excellency, we are reminding you of what you said. There's nothing new that we're bringing to the table. There's nothing difficult in our request. We are therefore requesting you, Your Excellency, to fire all those ministers who are appearing before SEC, all those constitutional office holders and other appointees who are appearing before ICC and DEC. It's only then that we'll believe that you are indeed serious about the fight against corruption. So, ladies and gentlemen, we thought, given what has happened this week, the conviction of our colleagues sort of began to cast a cloud on the bigger problem that we're going through, which is corruption. And I want you, the media, the fourth estate, to take a lot of interest. That's why we started from the beginning. Take a lot of interest in what has transpired over the past 3 years. Come up with a record of the corrupt activities under the UPND. Because our friends with their propaganda machinery now, they are trying to bring in other stories so that Zambian can forget. But the real problem we are facing now is corruption under the UPND. And that is the new story that we all must turn our attention to. With those remarks, I wish to thank you most sincerely and thank my colleagues for enduring and staying up to now to ensure that we speak to the Zambian people on this very important subject. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, J Cool, and turn on the notification bell, cause I'm gonna see you in the next video.